One, two, three. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Chalkboard History. Crash course on the 160th anniversary of the battles of Spring Hill and Franklin. You shaved your beard.
I did. I shaved it last week.
I know. I just thought I'd point it out for everyone at home.
Yeah. I was going for the Thomas Ruger mustache thing.
It's actually 1970s, like TV anchorman look is really what it is.
The Legend of Ron Burgundy.
There we go. So today we're going to talk about Spring Hill.
The battle that almost wasn't.
The Battle of Spring Hill, November 29th, 1864. Tell us what didn't happen.
Well, what was supposed to happen, the Confederate Army was supposed to block the Columbia Turnpike.
It was supposed to be a good day for John Bell Hood.
It's supposed to be the greatest day in his career as a soldier.
And then all for naught.
Not so much.
And the sad eyes got sadder.
Yeah. You know, he's always had that big, long, sad face.
Yes, very sad.
Do you think after the war it was just permanently
I don't know.
sad?
He was in New Orleans. I'm always happy when I'm in New Orleans. I mean,
let's not get started.
All right. So what happened at Spring Hill?
Well, all throughout the morning, Confederate troops were moving up out of Columbia, across the Duck River, towards Spring Hill to try and block the Columbia Turnpike, effectively close off Schofield from his access to Nashville, trap him here, and if they could block the Columbia Turnpike, they would have done that. But right around 8 in the morning, Schofield gets word that the Confederates are on the move and starts moving his guns and wagons about an hour or so after that, escorted by 2 Federal infantry divisions. One of them, under Nathan Kimball, is going to stop to the south of us at Rutherford Creek, while General George Wagner's division makes their way here to Spring Hill. And then he fights all day against Confederate cavalry and then all afternoon against Confederate infantry.
So years ago when I was working on my first book, I remember people said nothing ever happened in Spring Hill. The Yankees just got away.
The battle that wasn't.
Well, they actually said there wasn't a battle. And I think Spring Hill has been covered in myth, although in recent years I think we've been able to peer through the myth. And it really is like, pieces on a chessboard. Mm-hmm. Hood, I think, finally is getting the credit that he deserves for launching a pretty well thought out plan. The execution, a whole different scenario. Yeah. But John Schofield also has never gotten the credit that he deserves for reacting to the mistakes made by the Confederates. And so, yes, Wagner gets here first. Gets to Spring Hill and fends off Forrest cavalry who's coming in from the east. And, that's really the first domino, is the Federal defense of actually the town and the crossroads, which keeps Forrest at bay. I don't know that I fully grasped this when I was running around this area 25 or 30 years ago, because I was trying to figure out what Hood was thinking and what he did and what he didn't do. But it's very clear that Forrest cavalry is extraordinarily culpable for what happens in the end, because when the Confederate infantry arrives, 3 o'clock, 3:15, whatever in the afternoon, Hood, Frank Cheatham, and then the leading division, Pat Claiborne, never seemed to understand that Forrest had been grappling with an entire division of Federal troops, 5,000 men. Yeah. And how Forrest never figured that out, I don't know that we will ever know. But that is then the second domino.
Yeah, that he doesn't communicate that point.
Well, he may
not have communicated that point.
He doesn't communicate it because I don't think he ever fully understood it.
Yeah, but not even to say, hey, just so you know.
Yeah.
Right beyond that ridge there, bunch of Federal
Now,
infantry.
to be fair, maybe he did, and it just... Because Claiborne, of course, died, so his absence is a pretty significant one. Mm-hmm. But Claiborne stumbles into a hornet's nest and that's where the battle. So from where we are, it's like about a mile
right there.
To my right, to your right, to kind of the northeast of here. Heavy fighting, hundreds of casualties in a very, very short period of time. I remember thinking, the people who said, there wasn't a battle, I was like, well, the 42nd Illinois lost like 120 guys just like that. And Claiborne, Lowry's brigade had over 220 or 230 casualties. And
they're not a very big brigade to start out with.
So it's a nasty little fight, but that's the second serious problem, because once Cheatham's corps, Claiborne, William Bate, John Brown, get kind of bogged down in this mess of combat. It's late in the day. The terrain is pretty rolling. They're completely surprised by what they've run into. And then the fog of war sets in.
I'd even add on to that too, though. Is not Claiborne's division does a heck of a job in breaking Bradley's line and sending Bradley to the rear, but they do one heck of a job of holding their line south of town. When Bradley's men do rally and Wagner gets his division back in order, they hold on throughout the night.
Well, and we shouldn't forget that Bradley is wounded, and the elements of his brigade that eventually form up just south of Martin Shares' home, locally known as Ferguson Hall, they're reinforced by John Lane's brigade. Yep. So Lane's right ties into Bradley's shattered brigade, which I'm pretty certain Conrad took command of the brigade right then, because Bradley's bleeding from the shoulder wound. They haul him to the rear, and there gets to be this little tight defensive circle around the town, but holding the road to the west, the road to the north, the road to the east. Columbia Turnpike to the south remains open for the Federal Army, and that's where Schofield comes in, because as he sees this thing begin to unfold, he's coming up from the south.
Yeah.
Because earlier in the day, he'd figured out the threat was actually behind him. He begins this hurried withdrawal, and as he passes Rippavilla and gets close to town, the road's open.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. William Bates' division's going straight towards the road, and then all of a sudden they pull back.
Yeah.
I would argue Schofield and Ruger could have probably seen that movement.
Well, I think they did because Ruger pulls his division off the road toward where Spivey McKissick.
And the ground drops where they're concealed.
Did you know Spivey McKissick had died not long before that? He died in 1964. So they pulled off, because in the report it's mentioned as Dr. McKissick's residence or home, because they could see Bate coming at the road, and like an accordion, he got pulled back because Claiborne had become engaged. Well, by the time Ruger slips past Rippavilla into town, it's probably 5-ish. It's dark.
Yeah.
New moon.
Yep.
So with the sundown at 4:35, it's dark by 5 or almost so, and the doggone road is open.
Yep.
And Schofield knows it, and Ruger knows it, and then it's just one division after the other. Obviously, Wagner keeps holding the defensive position to make sure the Confederates don't jump out of the darkness. But back here, toward the Thompson house, where Hood is at, a complete communication breakdown.
Nothing's happening.
Hood, Cheatham, A.P. Stewart, Forrest, all the way down to the division levels. Claiborne, Bate, Brown, brigade levels. You've got, I think, probably 20 Confederate officers of some merit who are absolutely clueless.
And add to that Ed Johnson.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Who's part of Lee's corps, who'd accompany the flanking maneuver. And if you couldn't write a script any better, but this is the fog of war. This is the days before 9/11. This is the days before Pearl Harbor. It's the days before the Battle of the Bulge, when afterwards it's like, how could we not know
Something's happening, but I don't know quite what.
Sure. And then boom, it happens, and then everybody is, well, you're literally, because this leads to Franklin, you're picking up dead bodies. And so that's what we're doing on 9/11. That's what we're doing on December 7th, 1941. But in the aftermath of the unbelievable chaos and death and destruction, then people start to try and figure it out. And with Spring Hill, I don't think a lot of people, even who were involved, ever figured it out. One of the great benefits of hindsight is that I had access to materials they did not. And it was like having imagine a puzzle covering this whole table, and I had like half the pieces. And so you start putting them together, and I went, oh my goodness, this wasn't like malfeasance. This was the Confederates stumbled into something they didn't expect. They never figured that Schofield would do what he did. And by the time they figured it out, it was too late.
Yep.
And what happens the next day at Franklin is all because of this. John Bell Hood wanted the fight right here.
Yep.
This was supposed to be where he had hoped to deliver a crippling blow to Schofield. And fate turned pretty quickly. So What do you think about working here at Rippavilla and on the battlefield and get to talk about this every day? How cool is that?
I mean, Spring Hill's this is going to sound bad when I say it. Spring Hill's the one that I could talk about forever. Franklin, what do you want me to say? It's pretty cut and dry what happened here. Spring Hill there's so many doors to open up.
It's a little like Gettysburg.
It's a lot like the house. You can open up a lot of doors.
True. Or you can talk about day 1 at Gettysburg and day 2.
Yeah.
Day 3 is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Lee makes a decision he's going to attack. That's what happens. But day 1 and day 2 are where opportunities were frittered away, and the other side, as an old soldier once said about Gettysburg, bemoaning how the Confederates hadn't pulled it off, and he said, well, I think the Yankees had something to do with that.
Yeah.
And the same thing I think is true right here. You cannot fully appreciate Franklin until you can get a sense of how absolutely ballsy it was for Schofield to march his army right up the road within a few hundred yards of the Confederates in the dark.
And some of them literally lined up in a line of battle 100 yards away from the road, and then they go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And he's gone. All right. Thanks, everybody.